Hello everybody and welcome to my first ever video. I am doing this on my phone, so I will apologize for the quality and the shaking. I am just starting out, and yeah, as said, this is my first video. It is going to be a Commander deck tech on the new Commander that's come out recently. It is Toxia Dig Site Mentor. This is a great commander. I honestly love it. I've made this deck an elf bowl, elf tribal tap shenanigans deck in Bant. Great card. I don't at all focus at like the deck around the second ability, only the first. Being able to tap and surveil on all creatures is an amazing ability. Yep, great rare commander from the Brothers War set that's just come out recently. And yeah, let's get started. So obviously we have the commander. It's a human artificer, legendary creature, 3/4 for 1 and Bant colors, green, white, and blue. It gives creatures you control vigilance and tap to surveil 1. It does have another ability on being able to exile itself for 2 of every color, 2 of every Bant color, and 2 to return artifact cards in your graveyard, but we're not going to focus around that. Okay. So starting us off here, we have Ramp. So starting us off with a classic Soul Ring, 1 mana, taps for 2 generic mana. Then we have an Arcane Signet, 2 mana, tap 1 to add a color of any color within your commander's color identity. Then we have Arbor Elf. Arbor Elf can tap to untap forest you control. It's a 1 mana 1/1 elf creature. Great card early game, and also goes into the elf tribal deck. We have Llanowar Elves, Elvish Mystic, and Haven. Fighthorn Elves. Sorry. So they each do the same thing. They're 1 mana, green mana to tap for a green mana, 1/1 elves. Great, as said, early turn, 1-drops, amazing. We have the Bloom Tender. Great for an early game start. 2 mana, 1 green, and 1 generic. Trying to get it there. Then it can tap to add a color of each type that your permanents can produce. So when it's just out, it adds green. When your commander's out, it adds green, white, and blue. Then we have Incubation Druid. 2 mana, 0/2, add 1 mana of any type that a land you control could produce. Then it gets +1 counter on it, add 3 mana of any type. It's also got adapt for 3, pay 5, adapt 3. If your creature has no counters on it, you put 3 counters on it, making it a 3/5. Farhaven Elves. Search for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library when it enters the battlefield. It's also a 3 mana 1/1 elf. We have Rampant Growth. It's a sorcery for a green and 1. Search your library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped, shuffle your library. Pretty affordable card too. Just going to mention here, the deck isn't entirely budget, so do not expect it to be. Should have mentioned that at the start. Okay, so 3 mana Human Monk in Azusa Lost But Seeking, 1/2, and can play 2 additional lands on your turn, so you're not going to be struggling with land drops, and it helps to find when you need to get rid of lands in your hand. A more expensive card, Smothering Tithe. It is a 3 mana and 3 and 1 white mana, so 4 total enchantment card. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2, and if they don't, you get a treasure token. Sacrifice the treasure token to add 1 mana of any color. One of the best card advantage cards in the deck. We have Enhanced Surveillance. It turns all of your tapped Surveil 1 into tapped Surveil 3. And if you don't know what Surveil does, Surveil lets you look at the top card of your library, and you get to choose whether that card stays on top or goes to the graveyard. So in this case, it'd be look at the top 3, pick any of them to stay on top, and the rest go to the grave if you want. You can also exile this later on from your field to return your graveyard back into your library if you get low and are about to deck out. Realm Walker, another great card. You choose creature types of elves, then you can look at the top card of your library at any time and cast elf creatures from the top. With the Surveil mechanic, you'll always have an elf on top. Beast Whisperer, casting creature spells draws you cards. Awesome card to have. You can draw the cards you don't want on top with if you want to keep surveilling but don't want to lose the card on top. It's also an elf, goes into the tribal. Okay, we have Leaf Crown Visionary, 2 mana 1/1 elf, gives all other elf creatures +1/+1. Whenever an elf you cast an elf spell, you may pay a green. If you do, draw a card. Windfall. It's 2 and 1 blue mana, 3 total, sorcery. Each player discards their hands and then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. So if you have 2 cards, your opponent has 5 cards, you play this, you both discard all your cards, but then you draw 5 cards. Amazing way to get back a hand if you've already run out of cards in your own. Rites of Flourishing. It's a 2 and 1 green, 3 total enchantment. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws an additional card. Each player may play an additional land on each of their turns. Gives your opponent some advantage as well, but you're going to take way more advantage over it than your opponents do. We have Tyoba Benthic Druid. It's a 3 green and blue, so 5 mana total, 3 generic, 1 green, 1 blue. Legendary creature, Merfolk Druid, 3/3. When a land enters the battlefield under your control, gain 1 life, draw a card. Great card advantage, awesome card, love to see it. We have Tyrant of Gaia Strait. It is 4, a green and a blue, 6 total, legendary creature Serpent. You may play an additional land on each of your turns, and whenever you do that, you draw a card. So you get card draw for playing lands, and you get to play more lands. Awesome card. Going into removal now, we have Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile. Great 1 mana, 1 white mana exiling creatures cards. Awesome to get rid of those pesky things your opponents want to play against you. Darksteel Mutation to get rid of those creatures you just don't want around but can't get rid of. Those are what? We've got Chroma, Indestructibility, I believe. That's the one. Either way, it gets rid of commander effect and their effects. It gets rid of so many things. Awesome card, great versatility. The classic counterspell, 2 blue to counter any spell. Awesome card to have. Great way to stop your opponents from wiping your board. Mana Drain, the expensive version of counterspell. Same cost, same effect, except you get additional grey generic mana when it's your next main phase to use, equal to the spells that you've counted mana value. Counter a 12 mana spell, get 12 free mana out of it next turn. Awesome card. Beast Within destroys any permanent at the cost of giving your opponent a 3/3 beast. I'm good with that. Reclamation Sage. It enters the battlefield and destroys artifacts or enchantments. Only 1, but hey, it's an elf. You can bounce it or get it back. It's going to be an awesome card to have. Aura Shards. Same thing as the Reclamation Sage, except this triggers any creature that enters the battlefield under your control. It's an enchantment for 1, a green and a white. And yeah, any creature that comes into play under your control, token, non-token, doesn't matter, will destroy any target artifact or enchantment. And it's a May effect, which means if you run out of your opponent's stuff, you don't have to destroy yours. Null Mage Shepherd, probably one of the most synergistic pieces of removal in the deck. So it's an elf, it's 4 mana, 2/4, and you tap creatures that are untapped that you control to destroy an artifact or enchantment. So it's got 3 things going for it. It's an elf. Check. It taps. Check. It taps multiple things. Sorry. Check. And it destroys threats. Awesome card. Probably one of the better cards in the deck. We have a board wipe and Flood of Tears. With all the elves you got, you can tap them for mana, then cast this spell, return all permanents to their owner's hands, put your biggest thing back onto the battlefield, assuming you have 4 or more non-token permanents, and then you use all that floating mana to bring back all your elves. Aether Spout stopped your opponent's attacks by returning all their attacking creatures back to the deck. Awesome card. Very versatile, can be used against any opponent. Only targets one opponent, so you can set someone back really far and have everyone else be ahead. We have another strategy of the deck, which is Haste. So Haste in this case would be in the form of Flash. Flashing out creatures before your turn starts means they can tap straight away. We have another flash card that's specifically creature-based in Vivian. Specifically green creature-based in Yiva. Most of the creatures in the deck are green though, so don't have to worry. Proper haste now. We have Concordant Crossroads. Awesome card. 1 mana. It gives everyone's creatures haste, but it means that your creatures can tap straight away. Same thing with 1000-Year Elixir, gives it haste as long as it's using it for an ability and can untap creatures. Which brings us to the next strategy, untapping. We have an Elf Ranger in Corian Ranger. It's a 1 mana 1/1 elf. You return a forest you control to its owner's hand to untap target creature. Then we have another Ranger, Fairy this time, flash, flying, protection from blue. You return a forest you control to its owner's hand to untap target creature, like the other one. We have Kiora's Follower. You tap it to untap target permanent. We have a Kelpie Guide. Again, it can untap target permanent you control, but then you can tap target permanent as long as you have 8 or more lands. We have the Staff of Domination. It has a few abilities. Mostly we're going to focus on that 3 mana tap to untap target creature. Can go infinite, but not sure it should in this deck. Rally of Wings. It's a 2 mana, 1 generic, 1 white instant, and it untaps all creatures you control. Creatures you control with flying get +2/+2. I don't believe there's any creatures with flying. It's just there for that cheap untapping effect. Seedborn Muse. Untapped all permanents you control during everyone else's untap step. It lets you surveil during everyone's end step and just find the perfect cards when needed. Merfolk Lead. Other green creatures you control get +1. Other blue creatures you control get +1. You untap all your blue and green creatures during everyone's untap step. Great card since most of the creatures, if not all, are blue and green. We have Reese the Redeemed going into a token strategy part of the deck now. 1 mana 1/1 elf. It can tap for 3 and add a green and white elf creature warrior token. Or you can tap for 4 and green white, so Selesnya colors. For each creature token you control, create a token that's a copy. Doubles all your tokens. Great way to fill the board really fast. An Elvish Warmaster. Anytime an elf enters the battlefield under your control, you get an additional elf. Only triggers once each turn though. Imara goes into that tap strategy. You tap Imara, create a token, and then you can untap her to keep creating tons of tokens, as she's also an elf. Oh, sorry, I'll give a better look at that one. So it's Imara, Soul of the Accord is the full name. 2 mana, 2/2, Selesnya, Elf Cleric, legendary creature. We have Liz Alana Huntmaster, 4 mana. Anytime you cast an elf spell, you get an elf creature token. It's also an elf. We have Elven Ambush and Elvish Promenade. They both do the same thing. It creates an elf token for every other elf you control. If you control 8 elves and play these, then for this one you're going to get 8 elves, and then when you play this one you're going to get 16, assuming you play them on the same turn. We have Wolverine Riders. It's a 6 mana 4/4. At the beginning of each upkeep, you create an Elf Warrior creature token. If you have haste on them, then there's so many creatures that you're creating just can tap. It's an extra surveil on everyone's turn. And anytime an elf enters the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to its toughness. So it's a life gain strategy as well. Avenger Zendikar, just for those late game plays to bring out a whole bunch of creatures at once to win with your win con, and when land enters the battlefield under your control, you buff your whole team. Well, your plant team. March of the Multitudes takes advantage of your token generation in order to create even more tokens. These tokens have lifelink too, so they're a great way to get your life back. Fauna Shaman is a deck searching. You pay a green, discard a creature card to find the creature you want at the time or need. So if you need an artifact removal, this is where you go find your Reclamation Sage. Evolutionary Leap, another creature. It can sacrifice the creature tokens you're making in order to grab a real creature card, a non-token creature card from your deck and put it into your hand to be played. Elvish Harbinger can go find any elf you need when you need it, when it comes into play. You put it on top of your library. With certain cards, you can play it from the top of your library. If not, it's just a great card to flash in at the end of someone's turn. Win cons, we have Throne of the God Pharaoh. All those tapping creatures and such. During your end phase, you'll get to drain your opponents for every creature you've tapped. As long as those creatures are Seaborn Muse and others, you can then untap those creatures during your opponent's untap step to block. A Halo Fountain, another win con in the deck. This is the 2 win cons. So this one's 2 mana and a white. You pay a white to tap it and untap a creature you control to create a token creature. You pay 2 white and tap it to untap 2 creatures you control and draw a card. And if you pay 5 white and untap 15 creatures, you win the game. So this one's awesome. The amount of creatures you're producing and the amount that you can tap, you could win the game out of nowhere. Protecting your deck is really important. So we have Heroic Innovation to protect your board, permanents, and you can... Permanents you control gain hexproof and indestructible until the end of the turn for 2 mana. That is a ridiculous price. With all the elf ramp you're going to have, you're always going to be able to cast it. Protects your board, awesome against a board wipe. Teferi's Protection is another one that's great against a board wipe. It's a one-time use, but awesome card nonetheless. Also protects your life total. We have Privileged Position. Protects all your other permanents from your opponents using them against you. Gives all of them hexproof, and awesome card. Your opponent has to target this card with their removal in order to target anything else on your board. 8.5 Tails is another good card. It gets rid of single target removal by turning the spell white, or you can use it to make your blockers indestructible or pseudo-indestructible by giving them protection. Cards to bring back stuff. We have Regrowth. It can bring back any card from your graveyard back to your hand, so you can go back and get your board wipes, your card draw, your ramp, anything that might have been removed during the game. Most of the creature's stuff in this is 3 mana or less in mana cost. So this card being able to untap itself in order to return a creature card back to your from your graveyard to your battlefield. You can just use this with your commander to surveil, put creatures in the graveyard and untap it in order to bring those creatures that you put in back to your battlefield straight away. Awesome card, especially since you only need 3 mana to bring back any creature that's 3 or less. Swiftfoot Boots gives a little protection to one of your creatures and gives it haste. Then we have Allosaurus Shepherd. So this is a 1 mana elf shaman. It stops your green spells from being countered, and later on when you have an army of elves on the battlefield, you can turn them all into 5/5 dinosaurs to swing in for a win. The last non-land card in the deck is Imperial Archangel. It's just a trial So this one is 4, a green, a white, and a blue. For an angel creature, flying and shroud, meaning you can't target this and your opponents can't target this with spells or abilities. But it gets all damage that would be dealt to you is dealt to this instead. Sorry. Great card to have when you're in a tight spot and are about to be killed. You can flash this in using your cards, just stop the damage. Alright, then we have, as lands, we have Command Tower. You can tap for any color your commander's identity. We have Exotic Orchard. You can tap for any land color that your opponent's lands can produce. Emergence Zone, another thing that can give your spells flash but for a turn. Labyrinth of Scophos. You can pay 4 to remove a creature from combat. Awesome card just to stop your opponent from being able to attack you with one of their bigger creatures. Reliquary Tower can give you no max hand size when you need it. Rogue's Passage to get something through on an opponent that might be just about to die. Overgrown Farmland enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more other lands. A great dual land just to get out early if you need it to, or just to get your colors fixed. Temple of Mastery lets you scry one when it enters the battlefield. We've got Yavimaya Coast, can tap for generic, and or it can tap for green or blue when you need it by taking your damage. Then we have the Bark Channel Pathway, which is the green version of the land. It can also transform or flip over to the other side in order to be blue when you need it to be. We've got the Hedge Gate Pathway. It's a white land, which can be blue again if needed to be. Prairie Stream, it has both the plains and island land types and comes in untapped if you have 2 or more basic lands. Azorius Chancery, it enters the battlefield, you return a land you control to its owner's hand in order to bring this tapped. It can tap for 2, both blue and white though. And with your extra land plays, you'll most likely get to play the land you bounced. We have Skycloud Expanse, so it can tap for 1 to basically add your blue and your white. Another one of those lands enters tapped and skies for 1. Great card to get rid of the thing on top if you don't want to surveil it away. Mana Gate, it taps for green and one of your chosen colors, whether that be blue or white, whichever you need. We have Lair of the Hydra, another one that can tap for green and enters untapped unless you control 2 or more. If you control 2 or more other lands, it enters tapped. Then lastly, for basic lands, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 forests, since most of the deck is green. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 islands. And lastly, 1, 2, 3, 4 plains. Alright, so that's the deck list for my Tosca Dig Site Mentor. Hope you enjoyed. I will see you guys in the next deck tech or video. Enjoy your day.